April 29th, 1945. A concrete flak tower south of Hamburg. The air itself seems to vibrate, a low, guttural hum that works its way through the soles of your boots and into your bones. For 19-year-old Anneliese Brandt, a Luftwaffenhelferin, this sound is the preamble to hell. It is the sound of hundreds of Avro Lancaster heavy bombers flying in formation, their bomb bays pregnant with death. She stands at her plotting table inside the command center, the air thick with the smell of stale cigarette smoke, ozone from the humming electronics, and the sweat of nervous men. Her job is to translate the frantic crackle of data from the Würzburg radar into clean, precise marks on a gridded map. Each grease pencil line is an enemy aircraft, a target, a promise of the violence about to be unleashed. Outside, the great 88mm guns of the battery, monstrous steel dinosaurs, are already elevating, their crews moving with a desperate, practiced economy. The orders from the battery commander, Hauptmann Lichter, are sharp, clipped, devoid of emotion. Target Group Gamma, bearing 270, altitude 7,000 meters. Engage. The words are almost lost in the sudden, deafening concussion as the first gun fires. The entire tower shudders, a seismic jolt that rattles the instruments and sends a fine dusting of concrete from the ceiling. Anneliese doesn't flinch. She has lived this symphony of destruction for 2 years. The roar of the guns, the answering crump of exploding bombs, the high-pitched shriek of falling metal, it is the soundtrack of her youth. She focuses on the map, her world reduced to this illuminated square of glass. Another plot comes in, then another. They are swarming, more than ever before. Her hand moves mechanically, tracing the vectors of attack. Through the thick, armored slit of a window, the sky is a chaotic canvas. Puffs of black flak smoke blossom like deadly flowers among the silver specks of the bombers. You can see the glint of the sun on their wings, a beautiful, terrible sight. Then the bombs begin to fall. They don't whistle like in the films. They rumble, a freight train in the sky, a sound that grows from a whisper to a deafening roar in seconds. The ground heaves, the lights flicker and die, then come back on, powered by the emergency generator. A near miss. Someone screams in the corridor. Richter barks an order to maintain fire discipline. Anneliese keeps her eyes on the board, but her mind is 1,000 kilometers away. She thinks of her mother's last letter, tucked inside her tunic. It speaks of dwindling rations, of the garden, of praying for her safety. It speaks of home, a warm, sunlit apartment in the Eimsbüttel district, a place that feels like it belongs to another lifetime, a lifetime before the constant drone of engines filled the sky. Another explosion, closer this time, throws her against the table. The map cracks. The lights go out for good, plunging them into a suffocating darkness, pierced only by the red glow of emergency lamps. The shouting intensifies. The orderly rhythm of the defense is breaking down. Hours crawl by like wounded animals. The bombing subsides, replaced by a new sound. A sharp, rhythmic popping. Small arms fire. Richter is on the field telephone, his voice tight with a tension she has never heard before. They've broken through the perimeter, all non-essential personnel to the lower levels, hold them at the base. But there is no one left to hold them. The last line of defense was a handful of old men from the Volkssturm and boys from the Hitler Youth armed with single-shot Panzerfausts and a fanaticism that was no match for professional soldiers. The sounds of combat are getting closer now. The distinct, heavy chatter of a British Bren gun echoes up the stairwell. The steel door to the command center bursts open. It is not a German soldier. It is a man in a khaki uniform and a helmet shaped like a soup bowl. He holds a Sten submachine gun, and his face is smeared with dirt and exhaustion. Behind him are others. They are British, Tommies, young, tired, but their eyes are hard. The world stops. The humming, the explosions, the shouting, it all fades into a ringing silence in Anneliese's ears. Hauptmann Richter slowly raises his hands. The other men follow suit. Anneliese looks down at her own hands, still clutching the grease pencil. They are trembling. A British sergeant, a man with a thick mustache and weary eyes, gestures with his weapon. Out. Everybody out. Schnell. The war, for them, is over. As she is herded down the dark, smoky stairwell and out into the gray, cratered dawn, Annalise feels a strange, hollow sensation. She is a prisoner. She is alive. And she has no idea that the real battle, the battle for survival, has only just begun. The journey north from Hamburg is a jarring, rattling ordeal in the back of a British Bedford QL truck. Annalise is packed in with 24 other women, nurses, signals operators, and fellow Luftwaffenhelferinnen. The initial shock of capture has given way to a weary numbness. They sit on hard wooden benches, the canvas flap of the truck snapping in the wind, revealing fleeting glimpses of a landscape that seems to be holding its breath. The green fields of Schleswig-Holstein are deceptively peaceful, a stark contrast to the mangled earth they left behind. But even here, the scars are visible. A burned-out Panzer IV rusting in a ditch, a column of weary German soldiers marching under guard, their faces blank masks of defeat. Their destination is a sprawling, hastily constructed prisoner of war camp designated Stalag XIB. From the outside, it is an ugly geometry of barbed wire, watchtowers, and long wooden barracks set against a perpetually gray sky. The moment she steps off the truck, the smell hits her. It's a compound odor of wet earth, boiled cabbage, latrine trenches, and the unwashed scent of thousands of human beings confined in too small a space. This is not the heroic captivity of propaganda films. This is mud, damp, and soul-crushing boredom. The women are separated from the male prisoners and assigned to a segregated compound. Their new home is Barrack C4, a long, drafty wooden hut with triple-tiered bunks lining the walls. There are no mattresses, only straw-filled palliasses that are thin, lumpy, and crawling with lice. A single pot-bellied stove in the center of the room offers the only warmth, but fuel is scarce. Days bleed into one another, marked by a monotonous, grinding routine. The morning shriek of a whistle for appel, the roll call, where they stand for hours in the cold, damp air, being counted and recounted. The meager meals, a slice of dense black bread, a ladle of thin, watery turnip soup, and a mug of bitter ersatz coffee made from roasted acorns. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a dull ache in the pit of the stomach that sharpens into a gnawing pain at night. Annalise shares her bunk space with a girl named Greta, a signals operator from Berlin with a cynical sense of humor that serves as a shield against despair. They spend their days talking, endlessly talking, to fill the vast emptiness. They talk about their families, their homes, their hopes. Annalise describes her apartment in Hamburg in excruciating detail. The pattern on the wallpaper in her bedroom, the way the late afternoon sun would fall across the living room carpet, the taste of her mother's apple strudel. These memories become a lifeline, an incantation against the bleak reality of the camp. She paints a picture of a home that is waiting for her, untouched, a sanctuary she will soon return to. It has to be there. The alternative is unthinkable. News from the outside world is a currency more valuable than bread. It comes in whispers and rumors, passed from guard to guard, from one compound to another. They hear of titanic battles in the East, of the fall of Berlin, of the Führer's death. Each piece of information is a shockwave that ripples through the barracks, met with a confusing mix of disbelief, grief, and a flicker of something forbidden, hope. Could the end really be near? The guards, once stern and unyielding, begin to soften. A British corporal might offer a cigarette. A Scottish sergeant might look the other way during a minor infraction. The atmosphere is changing. The iron certainty of the Reich has evaporated, replaced by a vast, terrifying unknown. Then, on a day in early May, it happens. A British officer, a major, with a tired but formal demeanor, stands before the assembled women during morning roll call. He speaks through a translator, his voice amplified by a simple megaphone. As of 0800 hours this morning, all German forces in northwest Germany, Holland, and Denmark have surrendered unconditionally. For you, the war is over. A strange silence hangs in the air. It is not the explosion of joy one might expect. It is a heavy, pregnant quiet, thick with 1,000 unasked questions. Over? What does that mean? What happens now? Slowly, tentatively, the realization sinks in. A few women begin to cry silently. Others hug each other, a fragile, trembling embrace. Greta grips Annalise's arm, her knuckles white. "We're going home, Annalise," she whispers, her voice cracking. "We're going home." The words hang in the air, a beautiful, fragile promise. In the days that follow, the camp transforms. The rigid discipline dissolves. The gates, once a symbol of imprisonment, now represent a threshold to a future they had all but given up on. Finally, their names are called. Annalise Brandt, Greta Fisher. They are handed rudimentary discharge papers and pointed towards a line of waiting trucks. The euphoria is dizzying, a lightheadedness that is more than just hunger. Freedom. The word tastes sweet on her tongue. As she climbs into the back of another Bedford truck, this time heading south, a genuine, unforced smile touches Annalise's lips for the first time in months. The truck lurches forward, and the women begin to sing, a ragged but defiant chorus of old folk songs. The wire cage is behind them. The engine of the Bedford truck is a loud, steady drone, a rhythm of liberation. For the first 50 kilometers, the mood is one of pure, unadulterated joy. The women sing with an almost frantic energy, their voices soaring over the rumbling of the motor. They are free. Every kilometer that passes is a kilometer closer to their old lives. Annalise sits near the back, the wind whipping strands of hair across her face. She watches the green landscape of the German countryside roll by, a sight she thought she might never see again outside of a barbed wire fence. She feels a lightness in her chest, a bubbling optimism that makes the gnawing hunger in her stomach seem trivial. Greta, beside her, is already planning. "The first thing I'm doing," she announces to everyone, "is having a real bath, a hot one, with soap, and then I'm going to eat a whole chocolate cake by myself." Laughter ripples through the truck. They all have their own versions of this fantasy: a favorite meal, a comfortable bed, the embrace of a loved one. Their British driver, a young man named Corporal Evans, occasionally glances back at them through the small window of the cab, a bemused smile on his face. He doesn't understand their words, but he understands the emotion. For these women, he is not a conqueror or a guard. He is their chariot driver, delivering them from bondage. But as the truck continues its southward journey, a subtle change begins to occur, both in the landscape and in the atmosphere inside the truck. The first sign is a bridge, or rather, the skeleton of one. Its steel girders are twisted into grotesque shapes, its stone foundations shattered, lying in the shallow river below. A temporary Bailey bridge, erected by Allied engineers, allows them to cross. The singing falters for a moment, then resumes, a little less certain this time. Soon, they see more signs. A column of people walking along the side of the road, heading in the opposite direction. They are not soldiers, they are civilians, mostly women, children, and old men. Their faces are gaunt, their clothes are rags, and they push handcarts piled high with their meager possessions. They are refugees, displaced from the east, fleeing the advancing Red Army. They stare at the truck with hollow eyes, their expressions a mixture of envy and apathy. Annalise feels a knot of unease tighten in her stomach. Where are they going? Where is there to go? The world outside the camp was supposed to be whole, waiting to welcome them back. This is something different. This is a world on the move, a world broken and displaced. The truck rumbles through a small town that appears, at first glance, to have been spared. But then they see the details. Half the roofs are gone, replaced with tarps. Windows are boarded up. And on the main street, a group of women, their heads wrapped in scarves, are methodically cleaning bricks, scraping off the old mortar and stacking them into neat piles. These are the Trümmerfrauen, the rubble women, the new architects of a ruined nation. The sight is so strange, so unsettling, that the last vestiges of song die in the women's throats. A heavy silence descends upon the truck, broken only by the engine and the wind. Annalise looks at Greta, whose face has lost its cheerful glow. The dreams of chocolate cake and hot baths seem to be receding, replaced by a dawning apprehension. What have they been released into? As they approach the outskirts of Hamburg, the destruction is no longer sporadic. It is total. It is absolute. The landscape transforms from damaged countryside into something alien, a moonscape of shattered buildings and rubble-choked streets. For miles, there is nothing but the jagged teeth of ruined apartment blocks silhouetted against the sky. Skeletons of factories, their roofs peeled back to reveal the twisted guts of machinery. Churches with their spires decapitated. Entire city blocks have been flattened, pulverized into a gray dust of brick dust and concrete. The truck slows to a crawl, navigating a narrow path cleared through the debris. Annalise stands up, gripping the side of the truck, her knuckles white. She cannot process what she is seeing. Her mind refuses to connect this apocalyptic vision with the vibrant, bustling city she holds in her memory. This is not Hamburg. This is a necropolis, a city of the dead. The truck finally shudders to a halt at a crossroads marked by a makeshift sign. Corporal Evans gets out of the cab and walks to the back, his face grim. He unlatches the tailgate. "This is it, ladies," he says, in slow, simple English, his voice softer than before. "This is as far as I can take you. Hamburg." He gestures towards the endless vista of destruction. "You're free to go." The women climb down slowly, one by one, their movements stiff and uncertain. They stand in a small, silent cluster on the side of the road, clutching their meager possessions. The euphoria of the morning is a distant, mocking memory. They are free. But free to do what? Free to go where? Annalise looks at the landscape before her, at the wind kicking up dust from what was once a street, and a cold, terrifying truth begins to dawn. The prison of barbed wire has been replaced by a prison of rubble, and she is utterly, completely lost. The Bedford truck turns around, its engine noise fading into the oppressive silence of the ruins, leaving the small group of women alone in a world they no longer recognize. For a long moment, nobody moves. They are statues of disbelief, staring at the panorama of annihilation. The Hamburg they knew, the scent of the harbor, the clang of trams, the murmur of crowded streets, is gone. In its place is the smell of cold ash, damp plaster, and a faint, sweetish odor of decay that clings to the back of the throat. The only sound is the mournful sigh of the wind as it whistles through the empty window frames of skeletal buildings. Slowly, the group begins to break apart. With quiet, murmured farewells and promises to find one another that they all know are empty, they peel off in different directions. Each woman is now an island, embarking on a private pilgrimage into the wreckage of her past. Greta gives Annalise a quick, hard hug. "Be careful," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion, before turning towards the direction of what was once the Altena district. Annalise is alone. She adjusts the small satchel on her shoulder, its contents a pathetic summary of her life. A spare set of underclothes, her mother's last letter, and her now useless military paybook. She begins to walk. Her destination is Eimsbüttel, a journey that once took 30 minutes by streetcar. Now it is a trek through an alien geography. The streets are gone, buried under mountains of rubble. The landmarks she once used to navigate her city, a favorite bakery, a cinema, a park bench, have been erased. You must learn to read the ruins. You look for the ghost of a street pattern, the remnant of a corner building, the specific way a foundation has crumbled. It is like navigating by the stars in a sky where all the constellations have been scrambled. Her boots crunch on a carpet of shattered glass and pulverized brick. She scrambles over huge mounds of debris, her hands raw from gripping jagged concrete. She passes other people, but they are like ghosts, moving with a single-minded purpose, their faces grim and averted. No one makes eye contact. Everyone is locked in their own private search, their own personal grief. She sees a child's doll, half buried in the rubble, its porcelain face cracked and one eye missing. She sees a single, elegant shoe lying near a pile of charred timbers. Each object is a silent testament to a life violently interrupted. After what feels like an eternity, she finds something she recognizes: the twisted, blackened iron frame of the U-Bahn station near her home. A jolt of adrenaline, a desperate surge of hope courses through her. She quickens her pace, her heart hammering against her ribs. She turns down a path that was once her street, Osterstrasse. But the street is not there. What is there is a canyon of rubble, flanked by the hollowed-out shells of buildings. She begins to count the ruins, trying to locate her own. The first one, the second, the third, there. Where her apartment building, a handsome 4-story structure with ornamental balconies, there is nothing. Not a shell, not a ruin, just a crater. Annalise stops. Her legs feel weak, as if the bones have turned to water. The crater is deep, filled with a slurry of rainwater and debris. A few splintered beams of wood stick out of the muck at odd angles. This is it. This is where her home was, where her mother was. The carefully constructed image she had maintained for months in the prison camp, the sunlit room, the smell of baking, the promise of a warm embrace, shatters into a million pieces. A dry, racking sob escapes her lips, a sound of pure anguish that is swallowed by the vast, indifferent silence of the ruins. She stumbles to the edge of the crater and sinks to her knees, the sharp rubble digging into her legs. She touches the scorched earth. It is all that is left. She stays there for a long time, the gray sky weeping a cold, thin drizzle. Eventually, a figure approaches, an old woman, bent and frail, pushing a small handcart with a bucket of water. She stops when she sees Annalise. Her face is a roadmap of sorrow. "You are the Brandt girl, yes?" she asks, her voice a dry rasp. Annalise can only nod, unable to speak. The old woman, Frau Schmidt from the building next door, looks at the crater and sighs. "The firebombing, the big one, in 43, she says, her voice devoid of emotion, as if stating a fact from a history book. The whole block went up. The cellar collapsed. Nobody got out." She pauses, letting the words sink in. "Your mother, your father, they were home." The woman's eyes hold a weary, shared pity. She has told this story, or one like it, many times before. For Annalise, the words are not a story. They are a final, brutal amputation, severing the last thread that connected her to the world she once knew. She is free. She is a survivor, and she is utterly, terrifyingly alone. The world shrinks to the size of a displaced persons camp. After the apocalyptic revelation on Osterstrasse, Annalise wanders the ruins for 2 days, a ghost in her own city, before collapsing from hunger and exhaustion. She is found by a British patrol and taken to a former school building repurposed as a collection point for the homeless and destitute. Here, her freedom takes on its new, permanent shape. It is the freedom to stand in line for hours for a bowl of watery soup. The freedom to sleep on a lice-infested straw pallet on a cold gymnasium floor, surrounded by the coughing and weeping of strangers. The freedom to own nothing but the clothes on her back and a crushing, ever-present grief. The euphoria of her release from Stalag XIB now seems like a cruel joke, a moment of madness before the true sentence was passed. In the POW camp, there was at least a shared identity, a common enemy, and a collective dream of home. Here, in the ruins of that dream, there is only a scramble for survival. The occupiers, the British soldiers she once saw as liberators, are now the arbiters of life and death. They run the soup kitchens, distribute the ration cards, and patrol the streets with an air of weary authority. They are the new masters of a broken country, and she is just one among millions of defeated, starving subjects. Days are a struggle for calories and warmth. Annalise joins a work crew of Trümmerfrauen, spending 10 hours a day clearing rubble. It is back-breaking, monotonous labor. She swings a pickaxe against shattered concrete, her hands blistering and bleeding. She passes bricks down a human chain, her muscles screaming in protest. The work is a strange penance. She is dismantling the corpse of her own city, piece by piece. At night, she returns to the camp, her body aching, and falls into a dreamless sleep, too exhausted even for nightmares. There is no future, only the next swing of the pickaxe, the next ladle of soup. One day, while clearing a section of the city near the harbor, she sees a familiar face in another work crew. It is Greta. Her cynical humor is gone, replaced by the same hollowed-out look Annalise sees in her own reflection in puddles of grimy water. They embrace, a brief, desperate clinging in the midst of the devastation. Greta's family in Berlin is also gone, vaporized in the final battle for the city. They stand together for a moment, two survivors sharing a silence that speaks more than words ever could. "What do we do now?" Annalise asks, the question a raw whisper. Greta looks around at the endless landscape of destruction, at the gray sky, at the foreign soldiers directing their work. She shrugs, a gesture of profound hopelessness. "We keep breathing," she says. "That's all there is." The horrible truth is not a single, sudden revelation. It is a slow, grinding reality that she lives every day. It is the realization that her freedom is meaningless without a home, a family, a nation, or a future. The war she was captured in was a war of guns and bombs. This new war is a silent one, fought against hunger, disease, despair, and the crushing weight of memory. She was freed from a cage of wire, only to be imprisoned in a cage of rubble and loss. The joy of liberation was a fleeting illusion, a bright flash before the darkness settled in for good. You see her, one face among thousands, her features smudged with brick dust, her eyes old beyond her 19 years. She pauses in her work, leaning on her shovel, and looks out over the ruins of Hamburg. There is no anger left, no hatred, only a vast, empty ache. The war did not end for her when the guns fell silent. It simply changed its form. The hope that sustained her through captivity has been replaced by a grim, hard-won resilience. She will survive. She will keep breathing. But she now understands that survival and freedom are not the same thing. She was released from enemy hands only to discover that her entire world had become the prison.